And I think we are live. Hey guys, how you doing? Can you do me a favor and let me know if my voice is in sync with my lips and if this clap is in sync? Is it in sync or is it off? If you could let me know in the chat room, that'd be great. Just a little bit of technical stuff. Yes, Salvador says it is. It looks good. So my lips and everything's, Mark says pretty close. Okay, well, I'll take that as still as a yes. Sometimes there's a lag and there's a way to fix that. So everybody's saying it looks good. Okay, great. Awesome. First things first here, I'm going to do a screen share and show you a couple videos that I just recently uploaded. These are all parts of what I'm going to be airing tonight. It's the expanded version of the first lecture that I gave at the Take on the World Conference 2019. This is Testing the Globe, Taking a Disturbing Trip Down the Rabbit Hole. So I was uploading short segments from that presentation today, and that's these right here, these 4 videos. Now, I had a number of people in the comments section telling me that they can't watch this video right here, The Absurdity of Evolution and the Completely Insane Cosmology. Who's really stupid here? And people are getting upset with me. How come you made it so I can't view it here in the UK or in Australia or what have you? Well, that wasn't my choice, guys. That was YouTube. You can thank YouTube for that. And they're completely ridiculous and entirely inaccurate copyright infringement algorithm. They apparently have no clue what fair use actually means. So you can thank them for blocking it in your country. But if you're watching live tonight, theoretically, you should be able to see what you can't see in these videos here. In the replay of this video, they'll probably ban it as well because I'm including the same stuff that's in there. All right, so that explains what happened with that. Now, I'm going to try something else new here, and that is I'm playing directly from my Premiere Pro project instead of playing a exported video. I didn't have time to export it. Actually, I think I did export, but I didn't have time to make sure that it's okay. So I figured, well, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and play it directly from Premiere and see what happens. So hopefully this works, and let me go ahead and get started on that. The presentation that I gave at the conference itself was a little over an hour and a half. This one's a little over 2 hours, and it has a bunch of stuff obviously added to it. And if you streamed it, if you weren't at the actual event and you watched it online, they were kind enough to stream it on Take on the World TV, on the YouTube channel, Take on the World TV. But they only had a little webcam at the back of the room, and so everything was really small and blown out and out of focus, or you couldn't read the PowerPoint screens and stuff like that. So fortunately, I had my camera in the back of the room. Now, my camera was zoomed all the way out too, so in Premiere, I digitally zoomed in on me. That's why sometimes it's a little bit out of focus, because the camera was having trouble, figuring out what it was going to focus on, whether it was me on stage or the screen behind me. But either way, it's better than what you saw if you watch the live stream from the Take on the World TV YouTube channel. So hopefully, if you weren't at the conference, you will enjoy this. I tried to put a significant amount of time and effort into cleaning this up as best I could. There's a few places where the audio kind of goes out a little bit from the microphone. That I had like a kind of a headset microphone, and that cut out a few times, so you're hearing the ambient mic from my camera in the back. So that happened like 4 times, I think, during the presentation, just for a few seconds. So other than that, it's quite a bit better than it was on the live stream during the event. And this is part 1 of 3 that I did at the conference. I'll probably do part 2 either later this week or even next weekend, and then part 3 will follow. So I'll be putting up all my presentations as elaborated versions. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in.
Back in 2017, before we could even think of doing Take on the World 17, which ultimately happened, but before we had that opportunity, every door was closing and shutting, and we went to a Now UCTV Passover conference. Did anybody in this room go? Anybody here? Okay, we got a couple over here. Anybody else? No, great. So there was it was called Blood on the Doorpost, and it was a fantastic conference. And we had just gotten told no, that the location that we were planning for a conference got turned down. We went to this conference, we knew nobody, and we were really hoping, man, if we could just get Rob to come, we know people would show up, and everybody. Do you guys owe Rob either a gratitude or what did you do to me type of moment, right? Is that yeah. So we knew that was going to happen if we could get Rob to come, and we had some really good talks. We actually were at Denny's, so yes, I am a health guy. I went to Denny's. I didn't eat anything but a salad. So. But we didn't get a chance to talk about that. Rob gets bombarded at every single event, and at that one, he had groups of people lined up outside, because I think this was just right after all this stuff is blowing up, and it was just question after question after question, and just never had the chance. And I just got turned down for the facility location, and I didn't think it was going to happen. And so me and Liz get in the car, and we're ready to leave, and we walk the luggage cart back into the hotel, and who's sitting eating breakfast by himself? Not a single person around, and he was probably really enjoying it till I walked up. And I'm like, this is my chance. I'm like, Liz, hey, come in. Rob's here. Riley's in the car. He's watching a movie. And he was young. And that began this opportunity to share with him about the conference, and he said, I'm in. Let's do it. And lo and behold, Chad Schaefer walked in the door, which led to 3.5 hours later going to Panera Bread and talking. Yeah. And thus, my first speaker without a location was booked, and I had 2 of them because I booked Chad at the same time, and thus became Take on the World 17. Rob, you've been with us for now 3 years, so thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, bro.
We appreciate it so much. So,
like a shirt, too.
Guys, you can get this only at Teespring. Yeah. Through Testing the Glove. So, guys, I want to introduce to you Rob Skiba.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. This is going to be a little different for me because we're actually running it from the computer back there, but I need my notes up here, so I'm going to have to be kind of doing this a lot through the presentation, but we'll make it work somehow. So the title of my presentation, there we go, is Testing the Globe, Taking a Disturbing Trip Down the Rabbit Hole. Because that's exactly what it was for me, and maybe was for some of the people here. Some of you may be new to all this, so you're going to be like, what is going on here? So I'll just tell you in advance, look, listen, take notes if you want to. Don't believe a thing I say. Go and search these things out for yourself to see if they be true. I want to talk about taking the red pill. You guys know what I'm referring to there? What's it like? Sometimes you really wish I should have just taken the blue pill, right? Well, by way of sort of an introduction, some of the things that influenced my life growing up certainly were my parents. I grew up in a Christian family. My dad was a Baptist minister when I was a kid. Both my parents teach college-level Bible study courses and stuff like that, so I was always in the Word from the time I was able to read it until today still. And anytime the church doors were open, we were there. I accepted Christ as my Savior at age 7, the same year I saw Star Wars. Both of which had a profound impact on my life, of course, accepting Christ. And sitting in that movie theater and seeing that opening scene as a 7-year-old, wow, my mind was blown. I made a public declaration. I said, I'll either be an astronaut, a filmmaker, an actor, or dead by the time I'm 30. And it wasn't because I had a death wish, but when you're 7 years old, 30's like ancient, right? So my thinking was, if I hadn't achieved one of those things by the time I was 30, it would have to be because I was dead. That's how determined I was to get into those things. And of course, Jim Irwin came through my little Baptist church and signed that picture, allegedly, of him on the moon. It says, reach for your dreams, Rob, aim high. And so as a result, I wanted to be an astronaut. That was my ambition. And I was a Star Wars, Star Trek geek in the extreme. So much so that that's me, 18 years old, with a Star Wars bed sheet. A week before I went to boot camp. Yeah. So, Star Wars bed sheet, 18. All right. So I went into the military and flew helicopters. That was my step one phase to getting into the space program. I wanted to learn helicopters first, transition later to learning how to fly jets, and then, of course, put my application in to the space program, and all that had to be done by the time I was 28. So, getting in at 18, I had to get started right away, and I excelled at everything I did, working toward that goal, but God had other plans. He stopped me at every turn that I tried to, I was excelling, was graduating top of my class, everything's great, top choice, and 4 times I got rejected for things outside of my control, government cutbacks and different things like that. And finally I just said, okay, Father, you got different plans. It wasn't until many, many, many years later that now I look back and go, thank you, Father, for preserving me from going into that. But even still, during that whole time, I was a major Star Trek fan. That's me going to Star Trek conventions in my 20s, hanging out with the actors and stuff like that, getting signatures. And I even got to act on stage with Mark Leonard, the guy who played Spock's father, Sarek. Yeah. So let me just tell you that the stuff that I'm going to talk about, there was no incentive at all for me to talk about the things I'm going to be talking about this weekend. No incentive whatsoever to embrace what we're going to be talking about here. I didn't want to embrace any of that. So I ended up becoming a public speaker, and as a result of doing the research right there, my first couple of books ended up becoming Amazon bestsellers pretty quick, and as a result, that put me on the public stage and ended up traveling the world talking about primarily things like government conspiracies and the Nephilim giants and hybrids and all that weird stuff in the Bible that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And in the process of doing that research, I came to realize that we live in a sea of lies. They've been lying to us about a great many things. And a big one for me, look, I was in the Boy Scouts, I was third-generation Army guy, Joe Patriot, rah-rah, right? I became a missionary in 2004, and in 2006, I was on a plane to Kazakhstan, 14-hour flight, and the entire time, the guys behind me were talking about how 9/11 was an inside job. And I was fuming mad. How dare you, listening to these people. Now, I didn't say or do anything to those guys, but I had to listen to them for the whole flight. Got to Kazakhstan, did my thing, came home, and started doing some research because I was determined to prove them wrong, even though I'd never see them again. And stumbled across these videos right here. Loose Change. How many of you guys have seen Loose Change? Whew. Man, let me put it this, how many of you have not seen Loose Change? Okay, that's about 50-50 here. Interesting. Well, if you haven't, you should check it out. It was an eye-opener for me. Took a step back, and all of a sudden I started thinking about the things that I thought about while 9/11 was happening. And saying to myself, that can't happen. Buildings falling at free fall speed into a pile of ash from jet fuel, which burns at 1,800 degrees, really fast. That initial fireball, if that's the official story, that initial fireball was the jet fuel, gone, burnt up in seconds. How does jet fuel melt steel, right? Well, here's a little video for those of you that this is a little bit new for you. This is sort of a very, very condensed version of just some of the facts that are in those documentaries you see on the screen there.
The core of each tower was a rectangular pillar, 87 by 133 feet, comprised of 47 steel box columns ranging from 36 by 16 to 52 by 22 inches.
The story we were told. This rock-like steel grid gave way because fire warped the trusses, causing the bolts to fail. As the trusses sagged and fell, the floors dropped with them. In its 2002 documentary, Why the Towers Fell, PBS creates a video model.
Once the trusses fail, the floors they were holding cascade down with a force too great to be withstood. The result is what's called a progressive collapse, as each floor pancakes down onto the one below.
What remains standing? The tall, indestructible core. Why does PBS fail to explain the complete disappearance of the Twin Towers cores?
By that evening, eyewitnesses and experts alike were rushing to defend the official narrative of events, claiming that raging jet fuel fires melted the steel inside the Twin Towers.
I saw this plane come out of nowhere and just scream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
Marlene Davis is the Dean of Architecture at the University of Tennessee. She calls the 110-story tall twin tower tube structures. That means there are no internal columns holding it up.
You know, when we saw this yesterday, people said, oh my goodness, there was a bomb on there. There must have been a bomb that collapsed.
Must have been a bomb below.
Right, that finished the job. Well, it turns out we heard from experts who said that, you know what, the fire on those floors, probably 1,500 degrees. Steel can only withstand so much because the steel structure that holds the building up was on the outside, and essentially the building started to melt and it gave way and it toppled.
CBS's Jim Stewart in Washington has been tracking events all day and has the latest. Jim?
We're told rescue workers have recovered a passport and the debris. It belonged to one of the dead hijackers.
Another development on Saturday. New York officials revealed at a news conference here in the city that a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
Well, Dan, not far from here, a passerby found the passport of one of the hijackers. Evidence this disaster scene is also a crime scene.
These passports are so magical and so wonderful that, like Gollum's ring, they call to you. They call to who they want to find them, but not any normal mortal. No. The ring calls out only to FBI agents.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
On the morning of September 11, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York, while in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon in the Budget Analyst Office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbored them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-TECH, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission did brilliantly, answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. Osama bin Laden lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. You will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever.
How ridiculous is that story, and yet we all bought it? It's 2019, we need to wake up. All right? Well, that was the beginning of my taking the red pill. Then, as I kept doing research, I sort of realized, what? All of our presidents are related to each other? Every one of them, yes, even Barack Obama and Donald Trump. All of our presidents are related to each other. And some other interesting characters as well. And not only are they all related to each other, they're all related to one guy. King John Lackland, the signer of the Magna Carta and the creator of the Lord Mayor Parade in England, which honors the Nephilim giants Gog and Magog. Your votes don't matter, folks. Maybe on the local congressional level, sure, presidential level, this whole thing's rigged. I'm going, and I used to be one of these real rock the vote kind of guys, hardcore, tea parties and all that stuff. That was a big one for me. So then, somebody asked me, what about the Apollo moon landings? And I start looking into that. I was a big NASA fanboy. Didn't want to believe that was a lie. Well, this is a website you need to check out, aulis.com, A-U-L-I-S. Spend a lot of time on that website. There's a lot of information there. Now, let's see what the astronauts have to say for themselves.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
We're also really pushing the boundaries in terms of where we're going forward with exploration. I think humans are naturally driven to do this, and this is really the beginning, I think, of human beings leaving low Earth orbit. I certainly plan on being around to see that.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Once we travel beyond low Earth orbit, the crew will be exposed to larger amounts of radiation. So we have to design both the crew protection systems and our electronic systems to withstand this radiation.
If there is something that definitely, at least in my opinion, exposes the Apollo program as a fraud, it's the Orion project. The Orion project, after they retired the space shuttle, the next project that's on the board right now is called Project Orion. And they're pretty much telling you that Apollo never happened, especially when they put out videos like this talking about the Van Allen radiation belts.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation.
What?
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation.
One more time.
An area of dangerous radiation.
Oh. What's wrong with that radiation?
Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back.
That doesn't sound good.
Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back.
The difference is the radiation here on Earth versus out in space. The radiation on Earth is of the waveform. We end up with gamma rays or the electromagnetic spectrum that will be coming off of radioactive materials in the Earth. In space, you actually have the charged particles, which are more damaging, and there are more of them. The flux, or the number of them, is greater, and therefore you'll end up with a higher, what we call a dose of radiation.
One of the most dangerous things for an astronaut in space are what are called solar particle events. The sun has a cycle where it becomes very active, and there are times when it's not very active. And when it's very active, it can spew large chunks of stuff into space called solar storms. And in fact, we're in a time right now as we're speaking when the sun's very active, and you hear in the news about these solar storms. And so a solar storm like that, if spacecraft were in the path of one of these things, could be very harmful to both the humans and the equipment.
We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
What? We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space? I thought this problem was solved over 40 years ago when he sent a bunch of people in jumpsuits and tin cans through it there and back a half dozen times. Oh, but I forgot. The Apollo guys, they were clueless regarding the radiation belt. That it didn't affect them.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt, and if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. You study to see what the threats are, the environment is, and then you say, how thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt. And then we build it that way.
We don't have the ultimate answer for radiation on Orion. We're still working on that. If we were to build Orion out of the materials we need, and the sole job was to protect for the radiation environment, the vehicle would really be too heavy. So we have to balance the weight of the materials that we put on the spacecraft with how much protection it's providing the crew. So we're really looking at it from an operational perspective. If we understand a radiation event has happened, the crew will actually take shelter in the aft bay of the vehicle. We have found over the years that water is a really great radiation absorbing material. So we could do things like water that's already there in the water bags for drinking and things like that. That water could be used to shield them. As well as we've had some concepts like a water-filled vest that they could put on should they know there's an event and need to be protected.
We don't have a clue when it comes to like how to protect them from like radiation. So we're gonna just like put them up there in like water suits. Yeah, we like water suits, and like we put water all around them, so the radiation could go like into the water, and then they could drink it, and it could be like a Fantastic Four. Everybody they'll come back and be mutants when they get back. But we just got some ideas, Yeah. But don't worry about it. Yeah, I know there are refugees everywhere, and like people are starving and stuff, and like we have homeless all over the place. But if we spend like a few $1 trillion, I think we should be able to figure out how to make water suits for the astronauts in space, and then maybe it'll work out like it did for the guys in Apollo.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
We went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
Yeah, if you pretend that it's not really there, then you can just go right through it.
To protect the astronauts from the Van Allen radiation belts, the lunar module would have required 6 feet of lead shielding. But here's what they really had for protection.
Obviously, the only shielding they had was the literally paper-thin outer hull of aluminum, and their suits consisting of glass fiber, some aluminum fibers, and silicon rubber.
It's very interesting concerning radiation that the astronauts were protected by a thin film of aluminum, when here on Earth they put a lead shield on us when they take a dental X-ray.
In conclusion, when NASA themselves admit to never having left low Earth orbit, and the fact that we don't even have the materials that could withstand the extreme temperatures and cosmic rays in space, How on earth can anyone believe that we ever went to the moon?
Now, as a former NASA fanboy myself, I have to say that was a really hard pill to swallow. But over the last few years, I've become more than convinced that we never went to the moon. And this belief was only further solidified the more I began to analyze the pictures allegedly shot on the moon. I have to say, I don't think they counted on Photoshop. Because you can take these images into image processing software such as Photoshop, adjust the contrast, and see stuff like this. Strange masks and rectangular boxes around the Earth. I even found one on the Apollo 17 mission itself, right here on the NASA website, Scientists on the Moon. Click on this picture right here. Supposedly the same mission, same guys that took the picture of the most famous picture of our Earth. I'm going to do save image as, and let's see, Apollo Moon. Let's call it Apollo Moon 17. And I'm going to open that in Photoshop. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on the Earth. I'm going to go to Image, Adjust, Levels, and I'm going to bring the levels up. Uh-oh. Why is there a square box around the Earth allegedly taken from the scientists on the moon in Apollo 17? And people wonder why I don't trust NASA. That's why I don't trust NASA. I mean, they're always out there saying, you know, Rob, everybody's trying to show you stuff from space and you keep rejecting it. This is why I reject it. These guys are liars. So, I mean, if we never went to the moon, then this picture is not real. Since then, they've put out many more what they call blue marble alleged photographs of our Earth. The problem is they're all vastly different. The continent sizes change from year to year. The colors change. There's no consistency. The most famous one of the blue marbles was the one done in 2002. But if you take it into Photoshop and start zooming in on it, you begin to see where clouds were replicated using the clone tool. I mean, even its creator, Rob Simmons, admits it is Photoshop, but it has to be. And when you look into time-lapse videos, it's just as bad, if not worse. Here's the one that got me questioning everything. You can check it out on the JPL website. Supposedly, it was shot from the Galileo space probe back in 1990. Well, I mean, the first thing that caught my attention was none of the clouds are moving. I could take my camera outside, point it up at the sky for an hour, speed it up in my computer, and see the clouds doing all kinds of stuff. But on that day back in 1990, this didn't happen anywhere in the world. And NASA and JPL are bad enough, but the stuff coming from other countries isn't any better. In 2008, this video was put out allegedly shot from a Japanese satellite. Besides looking pathetically amateur, where are all the stars? I mean, look, we get all these images from Hubble, right? Space is full of stars, beautiful colors, nebula, stuff like that. Every time we watch a sci-fi movie, you know, the planets are hanging there against the backdrop of zillions of stars. But when it comes to any alleged satellite imagery of our Earth, we never see any stars. Even HD footage like this, you can beef up the contrast and look. I mean, HD's got a lot of information. There's no information in this video for stars. I mean, it should look something like this, but it doesn't. Later, I saw this video from 2011. I think it's supposedly from a Russian satellite. And it also allegedly represents a real time lapse of one full day of the Earth. And when I compare this with the one from 1990, both again full day time lapses, the striking difference becomes obvious. I think what we're seeing here is merely the advancement in computer animation technology over the course of about 20 years. And here's an example of that technology. This is 100% CGI and admitted to be such. And then we have what I call the bozo Earth of 2015. And just like back in 1990, once again, the clouds aren't morphing. You can back it up, freeze frame it, go back and forth with it. You'll see the clouds aren't morphing, changing, or anything. They are just following the ball as it rolls around in a time-lapse animation. And don't even get me started on all the problems with this moon. I've got longer videos that deal with that. So if we put them all together, once again, when it comes to time-lapse videos, just like the still imagery, there's no consistency. Over and over and over again, I was finding doctored imagery and or stuff openly identified in the fine print as being a composite image or some form of CGI. The question is, why? Suffice to say, we simply cannot trust imagery from NASA or any other nation's space agency. It's all garbage. And the sad part is it's only going to get worse because computer software just keeps getting better and better and better. For instance, Andrew Kramer from Video Copilot just released this plugin for After Effects.
Alright, so there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with this plugin, and you'll be even more amazed when you see how fast and easy it is to use.
So, there you go. You just can't trust what's coming from, they say fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Well, I mean, if someone continues to believe a proven pathological liar, well, then they're an idiot. So, I'm saying let's not be idiots here. These people have proven themselves time and time again to be fraudulent. Once you realize the Apollo program was bogus, start looking into the space shuttle program. There's a lot of interesting things about that. And then, of course, start looking into the ISS. And you got to ask yourself, if we know for a fact that they faked stuff in Apollo, and we've got reasonable doubt about some of the space shuttle missions, and more videos coming out exposing the ISS with footage just like this, there's lots of stuff out there. There's some really good YouTubers out there who have been watching these guys like a hawk and pulling down footage like this. These people are lying to us with our money. Tens of millions of dollars a day they're lying to us. So yeah, when you've got so many videos exposing what's going on up there as a fraud, I'm sorry, but the so-called photographic evidence simply is not that compelling, especially if you actually take the time to look into it.
And unfortunately, I did take the time to look into it. Because unlike 99.9% of my detractors who regularly make fun of me, none of them have done any research. None of them have tested anything. They haven't bought the Nikon Coolpix P900. They haven't read any books. They haven't taken the time to go through picture after picture after picture on the NASA website, JPL website, and comb through footage of the space shuttle and the ISS and everything else to see these things. This was the beginning of my journey, folks. And you want to know how I started out? I'm going to debunk this whole flat earth thing. Funny how people who set out to debunk stuff end up becoming converts. So, word of advice, if you're here and you're not yet buying into this, I dare you to look into it. I double dog dare you to try to disprove it. That was the preface, okay? How did I get into flat earth? Well, it really started with this guy right here. John Gabrielson's a friend of mine. He puts on the Back to the Future conference in Austin, Texas, and he comes up to Dallas where I live every now and then, and whenever he does, we always go out to eat. And we went out to eat one day, and he says, so, Rob, you ever wonder, how does water bend? I'm like, what are you talking about? Water doesn't bend. It finds its own level. He's like, yeah, think about that the next time you look at the Pacific Ocean on a globe. What? Shut up and eat your burger. What are you talking about, But he put that seed in my head that rattled around in there for a little while until I stumbled across a podcast with this guy right here, Mark Sargent, being interviewed by Canary Cry Radio about his Flat Earth Clues videos. Now, I started listening to this video thinking this is an April Fool's joke. This was April 13th, 2015, thinking this is ridiculous, this is stupid. But by an hour and a half later, I'm going, shoot, that guy kind of made a little bit of sense. So I listened to the whole thing again. That was April 13th, 2015. 2 days later, on April 15th, I had him on my radio show. That is now the date that I affectionately refer to as the day Mark Sargent ruined my life. because he challenged me. Okay, Rob, you believe the globe, great, I get it, prove it. But prove it without using NASA, the government, or the military as your source. Well, of course, all the information that we have about the spinning heliocentric globe model is coming from NASA, the government, or the military. Well, all the stuff that I showed you before was me answering his challenge. I didn't listen to him, though. I went to NASA, the government, and the military, and I started looking at all this stuff because we've all seen the pictures. We've all seen it. I mean, this guy's an idiot, right? And then as I start looking into it, I'm like, composite? Artist rendition? Clone clouds? None of the clouds moving? What's happening here? So then I start, there's got to be something else out there. I stumble on this guy, and he seemed to have like a ton of content out there, Eric Dubay. And I thought he was the most articulate guy I'd ever heard, at least on this topic. And then I realized what he was doing is he was spending a lot of time reading on the air books like this. Zetetic Astronomy by Samuel Robotham. 100 Proofs Earth's Not a Globe by William Carpenter. Then this book right here, Terraform of the Earth, Not a Planet, Proved from Scripture, Reason, and Fact by David Warlott Scott, written in 1901. Once I realized where he was getting this information, I went and bought those books and I read them. And I read them in the order that I just showed you. Oh, actually, I read it in the reverse order of what I just showed you. I started reading this book right here first, and he was quoting from the other guys. So I'm like, okay. So I put that book down. I went and found the other guys. I read the other books, and they were good, but then I went back to this book, and this book really radically changed my life. He was an elderly man at the end of a life of time of ministry, was called to take a stand on what the scriptures have to say, could barely see as he's writing this book. He's writing in the beginning of it like, this is a labor of love. I could barely even see the page, you know. It's like 300-something pages of a labor of love. And at the end of this book, I'm paraphrasing, but like the last few pages of it, he said, I have done what I was called to do. Now, dear reader, it's up to you. And I felt like this guy was reaching across a century of time, handing out a baton saying, are you going to take it, Rob? And I wept like a baby at the pool of my apartment complex as I was reading this. And I prayed about it. I'm like, Father, I got to figure out what's going on here, because these guys were laying out a biblical case for all this stuff. Man. Meanwhile, there's this other character, Jaron Campanello, who's out there actually doing tests. I mean, he's doing long-distance tests with lasers and stuff. And he had this 4-mile test where he had a laser like 6 inches off the ground. 4 miles away, it was being picked up by the camera. Well, you do the math on the ball. It's supposed to be, you know, we're supposed to be on a 25,000-mile circumference ball. The math is roughly 8 inches per mile squared. You shouldn't be able to see that. And this guy's out there doing it. I'm going, wow. And then I see a video of this guy. He claimed to be a photorealistic painter for NASA, painting stuff for NASA. And he had a whole comic routine out there, you know, talking, is it real or is it a painting? You know, now I'm an artist myself. And if I really applied myself, I can get really close to photorealism. It's been a long time since I've done that, but you know, he does that, and he was talking about, well, I started thinking about what he was saying, and check this out. All these images up here, none of these are all paintings. Those are not real sculptures on the bottom there. Those are paintings. A friend of mine did paintings of sculptures. And the pictures up above, those aren't real glasses of wine. Somebody painted that. Now, putting it in perspective, which do you think is harder to paint? So I'm listening to Matt Boyle, and I'm going, well, he's got a reasonable case there. You know, and then I showed you, you know, all the other stuff that I went into. So, listen to this.
I'm a visualization scientist. I basically try to come up with ways of explaining complex science stories through the visuals and developing artwork and illustrations that actually can help explain the science story to people.
For decades, popular culture and shows like Star Trek inspired a generation of scientists by envisioning what space might look like. But wait, what does space actually look like? Heart nebulas, celestial collisions, a bird's eye view of the Milky Way, astronomers are charting the outer reaches of the cosmos and bringing back jaw-dropping images from telescopes like Hubble and its infrared cousin Spitzer. If you look down at the bottom of that Milky Way image, you'll see these 2 words: artist concept. This sweeping image of the Orion Nebula actually looks like this. And the TRAPPIST-1 star system, the latest discovery of 7 potentially habitable exoplanets that made national headlines, it's really only a box of gray and white pixels. You see, space art is part of NASA, and it has been since before we went to the moon.
They're just openly admitting it. The problem is we've all been fooled by space art, including that, the most famous picture we all have seen in our textbooks. I had that as wallpaper, okay? One whole wall in my bedroom was the surface of the moon with the Earth behind it. That itself was a composite image because there's no way the Earth looked like that from the moon, on the surface of the moon. So it was a composite image that even on my wall, you know? And then, of course, we've seen this before where they year after year, they put out blue marbles and they're all looking different. Now, you can write off the color issue by filters. Okay, because they'll say, well, the different satellites that took these pictures had different filters, and that's why the color is different. Sure, but that's not going to increase the continent size of the United States and, you know, other things like that, right? Something's seriously wrong here. What's the deal? If we're out there doing these things, why can't we just take a Polaroid shot without having it to be doctored in any way? You know, so it starts getting you questioning. And then you start looking at all the other ridiculous, pardon my language, crap that NASA's always putting out. You know, I started looking into various different things, other stupid things that we believe. First of all, you see that they had a very early relationship with Walt Disney. Now, there's all kinds of things we can talk about Disney and Freemasonry and pedophilia and all kinds of other sick things there. But they had a relationship right there because that was their propaganda machine. And you may have seen some of the videos out there how there's all kinds of phallic symbols and other sexual things that the artists have embedded in all kinds of the family-friendly cartoons that we watched, you know, from Walt Disney. Well, isn't it interesting that they put some of the same stuff even in pictures of the Earth where the clouds are magically spelling sex, right? And found this out also. This character right here, Pluto, was created by Walt Disney in 1930, coincidentally the same year we discovered the planet Pluto. And then decades later, we finally send the probe out there, and what do you know? There's an image of Pluto on Pluto. Imagine the coincidence. They're laughing at us. Seriously? There's a spot on Pluto that just so happens to look like Pluto? Wow. Okay, and right before that, news articles came out. I can't even believe that people believe this. They were trying to capture the shadow of Pluto going across the Earth as a distant star shone light on the planet Pluto, and Pluto's something like 5 billion miles away, and they were saying that the light from a distant star was going to illuminate Pluto from behind and cast a shadow for a few seconds on the Earth, and they were going to go measure it. Think about that for a little bit. Really? And that was just right before. It says the occultation happened at a unique time, just 2 weeks before NASA's New Horizons mission will make its nearest approach to Pluto on 14 July 2015. You're seeing the shadow of Pluto. What about Jupiter and Saturn? Much bigger. We should have shadows all over the place. We should be dodging shadows of planets with all those stars shining on them. Give me a break. They're telling us that there's all of these different Earth-like planets out there, right? How many of you guys been following the news on that? You know, they keep saying, that video I just showed you a minute ago, really all they were looking at is a couple of, you know, gray blocks. What's even worse, though, is how far away these things are. How far away these things, and how far away they say that they're looking, right? Do you know how far a light year is? 1 light year is approximately 6 trillion miles. They're telling us we're looking across thousands of light years. 3,000, that's 3,000 times 6 trillion. Oh, it gets worse than that. They said that they saw a black freaking hole at 55 million light years away. 55 million times 6 trillion. You got a telescope that can see that far? Zoom in on the moon right now and read me the serial number on the bumper of the buggy. Right now, or shut up. It's outrageous. I mean, it's like every month they're trying to see how much further they can push the envelope. How stupid and gullible are we? But that's the evidence we're all using for what we used to believe, or what some of you may even still believe to be true about our cosmos. We listen to these people, and if you're here from a creation ministry, how dare you? I'm calling you out. You know, I applaud you for what you did with evolution, biological evolution. And I'm going to hit hard on this tomorrow, why creationists should just stay away from the whole debate. They shouldn't even open their mouth. If you claim to be a Bible-believing Christian and you are using these people as your source for what you believe about the world and this place and the cosmos, there's a problem there. I had to finally just admit that because I loved NASA. I was a NASA fanboy, like I told you before. Oh, but yeah, we're going to Mars. Oh, and by the way, Mars just so happens to look exactly like some of the places here on Earth. Imagine the coincidence. It's incredible. It's a little more red. Oh, and by the way, they got rodents up there too. Wow. Imagine the coincidence. How cool is that? There's life on Mars. Squirrels. No, they're up in Devon Island. You can go look this up on Google Earth for yourself. They openly admit that they test the Mars rovers and stuff at Devon Island, which is up in northern Canada, sort of off the northwest coast of Greenland. Okay, we're dealing with a little dune buggy. By the way, do you actually believe we have the ability to remote control a dune buggy on Mars? I don't even have cell phone reception in here. I don't. Oh, but we're controlling a dune buggy on Mars. Really? Oh, why do we have to go to Devon Island to test? It's just a little dune buggy going around dirt and rocks. We got plenty of dirt and rocks right here. Why do we got to go to Devon Island? Oh, because it's cold. You could put it in an ice box and still simulate cold if you want to see if it can handle the cold. No, they're going to Devon Island because nobody else is up there, and it just so happens to look like what we think Mars looks like. Unbelievable. Oh, but Elon Musk. First of all, how many of you have ever heard the name Elon before you heard of Elon Musk? Anybody? A college by the name of Elon. Interesting. I'd never heard the name Elon before I heard of Elon Musk. How interesting, though, that Wernher von Braun, Captain Nazi NASA guy himself, right, wrote a fiction novel, I think it was in the late 1950s, about a colony on Mars. It just so happened to be led by a guy named Elon. Oh, imagine the coincidence. Oh, but now we've got a Tesla on the way. Did you hear about that? He shot up a car, supposedly. And he himself said, you know, it's got to be real because it looks so fake.
What was going through your mind? How amazed were you to see your roadster up there with Starman just cruising along with the Blue Planet? And how long will we be getting live views, do you think, from the car?
Well, I think it looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly.
Because it did look fake. A whole lot of people, look, they got a Tesla flying around the Earth. It just made a pass around the sun, from what I heard. It's on the way to Mars, I guess.
Okay, but now here's something else that's really interesting. Look at this car. Look at the tires. Look at the plastic and the leather and other things. Listen to this.
But we didn't really test any of those materials for, is it space hardened or whatever, So it just has the same seats that like a normal car has. It's just literally a normal car in space, which I kind of like the absurdity of that.
Yeah, it is quite absurd. Now, I went to the Contact in the Desert conference earlier this year, and this individual here, David Adair, claims to be a materials specialist working for NASA, allegedly testing various materials before they put it on objects that are supposed to be sent out into space. All right, now listen to what he has to say about testing these materials.
In the material sciences, in that environment, it's not friendly out there, y'all. It's 225, 250 degrees below zero on the shadow side, 250 above on the sun side. So right through the meridian line, you got a 500-degree difference. It's a total vacuum. There's ultraviolet rays, gamma rays, infrared, all unfiltered by the atmosphere. It just burns things up when they hit it. Some of our materials just absolutely disintegrated. They were gone. We just had a blank where we put the piece of material.
Okay, so if this guy's testimony is true, then he just completely debunked this. I mean, look at the rubber on the tires. You know, the tires aren't exploding, the rubber's not disintegrating, any plastic on there is not, you know, frying, and it's spinning. So it's going 500-degree temperature range from 250 plus to negative 250 plus as it's in direct sunlight and then, you know, spinning out of direct sunlight. And yet the glass is fine, the plastic's fine, the rubber's fine, the leather's fine. Everything's okay. It's just a regular car that Elon Musk himself said basically just pulled right off the lot and supposedly shot it up into space. So yeah, I agree with Elon. It does look fake, and the whole thing is completely absurd, and I think anybody who believes this is actually real probably needs to have their head examined.
We'll believe anything nowadays. Oh, by the way, they found the Star Trek symbol on Mars, too. Did you know that? Oh, this is real. CNN right there. A couple months ago, June 13th. We found the Star Trek symbol. Starfleet's been there already. Wow. Not only did they find one, they just found a whole bunch of them. Look at this, a whole fleet of Star Trek symbols. Just so happened to be on Mars. You know what? They're punking you. They're laughing at you. Just as they were laughing at me just a few years ago when I bought all this garbage. Nope, not no more. So, what does it look like going from being a skeptic to becoming a convert? As I said earlier, I dare you to do a little bit of reading. Start there, okay? You know, many of you have heard this quote before, Herbert Spencer. There's a principle which is a bar against all information, which is a proof against all argument, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is condemnation before investigation. If you're going to condemn without investigating first, all you're going to do is prove how high you've scaled the mountain of ignorance. You haven't done any research. Aristotle said, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Go ahead and allow yourself to just consider some information. Doesn't mean you have to believe it. Start considering it. Weigh it a little bit. Look into it. King Solomon said, he that answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and a shame unto him. Okay? If you call yourself a Bible-believing Christian, then start there. Start Genesis 1, and I dare you to pray this. Father, please remove my preconceived biases before I go into reading this, and let your Holy Spirit teach me. Because we all bring bias to the text. I did. I prayed that, and I got slammed on verse 6. First chapter, first book, verse 6. This thing called the firmament. That was a dangerous prayer. Father, remove my preconceived biases. Let your Holy Spirit teach me. Yeah, look into the firmament. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Then look into these other books. I already mentioned them, the three there. Kings Dethroned is an amazing book that was written in the 1920s. Fascinating book. Tells you how we got all the distances that we all quote. 93 million miles to the sun. How far is this and how far is that? When you read how they came to those conclusions, you're going to be like, how did any sane human being ever buy into this? And we're still quoting those numbers today. So there are people, how many of you have heard this issue was settled 500 years ago, right? Copernicus, Galileo, and all those guys. No, these things were still being hotly contested in the 1920s. I'd say even well into the 50s. It's just made a comeback, really. And if you're interested, I have the biblical stuff that deals with this topic, as well as those first two books combined into one book that I have here in the other room this weekend. Now, okay, like I said, I dare you to debunk this thing. If that's what your goal is, I'm going to debunk this whole flat earth thing. Well, there's a few things. I'm going to help you out here, okay? I'm going to help you before you go into this. The first thing you need to realize, if your goal is to debunk flat earth, this is the first thing you need to realize. Never forget, we used to be you. We all started out that way. We had the same indoctrination, went to the same schools, read the same books, seen the same movies and documentaries. Same thing. We used to be you. None of us belongs to the Flat Earth Society. Say it out loud with me. None of us belong to the Flat Earth Society. So that better not be the first place that you look. Oh, I'm going to go to Flat Earth Society, see what these guys believe. And here's a news flash for you. None of us woke up one day and said, geez, where's the club I can join that's guaranteed to make everybody hate me, make fun of me, and ridicule me, and make my life miserable? Where do I sign up? None of us did that. So don't make the mistake of saying, oh, this guy's a flat earther, he must be a member of the Flat Earth Society. That's just saying, oh, you say you're a Christian, you must be a Catholic. Oh, no, I grew up Baptist. You know? Don't go to the Flat Earth Society because you get all kinds of ridiculous stuff there. Like this. No one believes in the upward floating disk theory of gravity. Creation Ministries, listen up, Danny Faulkner and others who repeatedly show the floating disk in space. None of us believe that. Watch the screen, okay? You're going to see this. And everybody that tries to debunk the flat earth puts the same thing in their articles and in their video hit pieces and stuff like, flat earthers believe this is gravity. No, we don't. I don't know anybody. I've been traveling around the world talking about this for 4 years now. Nobody believes that. Well, it's on the Flat Earth Society website, so that must be what everybody believes. I'm helping you out here, trying to debunk. You guys don't know anything more about gravity than we do. The answer for everything, well, how does water bend? Well, gravity. You guys don't know. Look, we understand what goes up comes down. We all get that. Everybody gets that. I drop this, it's going to hit the floor, gravity. How does it work? What is it? Nobody knows. And they'll even admit that. Neil deGrasse Tyson has even been put on the spot. What is gravity? He's like, I don't know. We can predict with it. We kind of know what it does, but we don't know what it is. So stop pretending like you know what gravity is. Nobody knows what gravity is. All right. You can't just insert flat Earth into the Copernican model of the universe. Oh, flat earthers be like, pancake. 93 million miles, sun, Mercury, Venus, pancake. None of us believe that. You're going to have to rethink everything. Like, throw all of that out, start over. All right? But I can't tell you how many people that they depict the flat earthers be like, no, we're not. You are. Do at least some research, please, into the founding of these organizations. When you look into the history of NASA, JPL, and start seeing it, look, this is founded by Nazis, occultists, and Freemasons, and just, it's like, come on. Secret societies, occult practices and activities and stuff like that, Nazis. When you look into this, you're like, why am I ever believing something that's founded with, that's the foundation of this organization, or these organizations. Please, I'm begging you, learn what a fisheye lens is and what it does to images. I can't tell you, and here I am today, still getting this stuff. People send me stuff like this all the time. Proof the Earth's a globe. Look at that. See, it's a globe. It's cathartic for me to do that every now and then. I got to get out. Because that's what I hear in my head when you're sending this to me. All right, here's a little clue, right? If you think that that's what if Felix Baumgartner's over planet New Mexico, just complete the curve. Ooh. That's a small Earth you're living on. No, it's called a fisheye lens. Oh, but still, I had people, even friends or now former friends, telling me, right? Making fun of me, saying stuff like this. You are seeing what you want. Look again. Look beyond the flat earth gurus and their false claims. A fisheye lens doesn't curve things that much. No. How come you have the same curve 100 feet off the runway, Doug, that you have, at 70,000 feet? Right? Same curvature, see? Look behind the guy's head. Interesting. This guy's got a PhD. And he's trying to say I'm stupid. And he's sending me this as proof. And then you got organizations like this, physics.org, physics students, right? PhDs, saying, look, students captured curvature of the earth. Wow, check it out. You would have thought that the curved rope might have given them a clue. Or they could have stopped the video at 4 seconds and magically see the same curve at 50 feet that they saw at 100,000 feet. Fisheye lens, if you still have questions, get with Michael Solomon. He can help you out. You know? Please, don't be trying to tell me I'm stupid and send me this as your proof. And I get this all the time. How many others get the same thing? Am I the only one here? Anybody else getting that all the time? Chad, you getting it? Man. You don't have a working map or model either. Ken Hovind, I'm going to debate Rob Skiba, but first, Rob must provide an accurate map and model before I'll even consider debating him.
I texted Rob Skiba on his YouTube channel. I put a comment on there at 4 o'clock this morning. I woke up and I thought, I'll just check and see. I've never been to his channel before. And so maybe once, I don't know. But anyway, and I appreciate the work he's doing for the Lord. But I said, Rob, I accepted your challenge for a debate. See Kent Hovind official. Send me an accurate model or map of the flat earth and then call 855 Big Dino to schedule a debate. I suggest you read Proverbs 25:8 carefully, which means don't go to war with somebody till you've really counted the cost. If you want to have a debate with me, you better take that literally, okay? I have officially accepted your challenge to debate the flat earth topic. See my YouTube, Kent Hovind Official, July 8th and 9th. I don't want to fight against a cloud or the air. He that beateth the air, talks about 1 Corinthians. So send me an accurate model and a map of your flat earth. And we will debate the various aspects of this controversial topic in this order. Number 1, is the earth flat or round? Where's my globe, Nick? Oh, here it is, okay. Is it flat or round? Okay, that's the only topic we're going to discuss. Secondly, we'll have a second debate. Does it spin? Thirdly, does it circle the sun? Heliocentric versus geocentric. 4, does the Bible literally teach flat earth? Call me 855 Big Dino to schedule, and after you send me your accurate model or map.
Newsflash, Ken, you believe the earth is a globe since Pythagoras, right? Eratosthenes, 2,300 years ago. Why do you have 250 plus maps? None of them accurate. Well, that's because you're trying to take a 3D object and turn it into a 2D object. That's not my problem, Kent. That's your problem. You believe you live on a ball. So if you're going to demand that I give you an accurate map, you better provide one too. And when it comes to the model of the cosmos that you believe, we got Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku and others saying when it comes to our understanding of the cosmos, we are 96% stupid.
We add up all the stars, the galaxies, the planets, the comets, the black holes, the dark clouds, everything out there that we can see, touch, smell, or taste. And it doesn't add up to give us the gravity that we see operating in this universe. So really we should be calling it the dark force, because we don't know if it's made of matter. It could be a profound misnomer, sending people off in thought directions that might not really be the right path. So dark matter is just simply what we call this thing about which we know nothing, responsible for 85% of the gravity of the cosmos. It is the longest standing unsolved problem in modern astrophysics. Dark matter, dark energy. Everything we know about the universe, what we're made of, galaxies, stars, planets, that's all right here. So, according to this chart, we are 96% stupid.
In cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science.
10 to the 120th power when it comes to your understanding of the model that you believe in. So don't come after us with demands that we need. Look, I've been into this for what, 3-4 years now with no resources and no money, and you're trying to get me to tell you exactly what the map and model is of the cosmos when you guys have had $50 million a day and unlimited resources for like a century almost and 2,300 years, and you guys still don't have a map or model yet? Please, don't come after me about that. And relax, no one's falling off the edge of anything. Oh, if it's flat, you're gonna fall off the edge? No. No one's falling off the edge. You can relax. That's been taken care of. God's got you covered. Most of your typical top X reasons. We got top 10 reasons why we know the Earth's a globe. Okay, watch your videos. Well, I can make a 90-degree triangle on a ball. That proves the Earth's a globe. Really? That's one of your proofs? You can draw a 90-degree triangle on a ball, therefore, ipso facto, the Earth's a globe. Okay. Oh, when I look up, all the other stuff up there is spherical, so we must be too. Well, that's an interesting assumption, but it's not a proof. That's like saying all the billiard balls are spherical, so the table must be too. Biblically speaking, no. This place is center stage, main attraction. Everything is up there to serve us. Hey, the lights are spherical, so the platform must be too. It's an interesting assumption, but it's not a proof. So many of their other so-called proofs for why we know the Earth's a globe aren't much better than that. I found that out early because I was trying to defend this precious ball thing that I believed in, so I started looking for videos that I could use for my defense that I believe the Earth's a globe, and when I wasn't even barely into this a week, could immediately debunk 8 of the top 10 reasons myself with barely even thinking about it. So your proofs are lacking, and your number one proof is photographic evidence. Well, we just looked at that a little while ago. How trustworthy is the photographic evidence? Not very trustworthy. Please try to keep up with the rest of the class. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of people come into it, and I appreciate some people come into it, it's brand new, it's new to them, so they launch into accusations and questions and attacks. Well, how come this? How come that? Look, I've got 500 videos up already. About 150 of them are just flat Earth related. I'm one guy. Paul, how many videos would you say you've got up? 150? Chad, how many? Over 100. Most guys would probably say the same thing, guys and gals. There's a lot of good researchers out there doing stuff. Easily 100 plus videos out there. We've been doing this for 4 years. Take a little bit of time before you ask a question to look into it. Maybe somebody's already dealt with it. We don't have time to repeat ourselves. Please try to keep up with the rest of the class. If you're a Christian, sorry to say, but the Bible's a flat earth book from cover to cover. It just is. So you can take a picture of it, leave it up for 5 more seconds. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's what you need to know, at least getting started, if you're going to try to start debunking this whole thing. Then, after that, you start looking into ancient cosmology. Start studying what the ancients believed. And you'll start seeing culture after culture after culture had an understanding of the cosmos that looks something like this. The Sumerians right there, the Egyptians, the Greek cosmology, same thing. The Mayan, the Incan, the Navajo cosmology, same thing. The Norse, the Irish. Even in the Marvel movies with Thor, right? Thor from Asgard. They actually depicted Asgard like this. So they got it right. That's what the ancients believed. You start looking into these things, and this is what I found really interesting. See that spire thing right there that's sort of in the middle of their circle of Asgard? The Bible talks about the circle of the earth. There's a circle of Asgard. How many of you heard of Gerardus Mercator? The map that we've all seen in our classroom, the Mercator map? Yeah, go look this up. What did Mercator know? Go check out the letter that he wrote to John Dee in 1577. Go look it up. Google it. Google the letter Mercator wrote to John Dee in 1577. He's the guy that made this famous map that's grossly distorted. Greenland is nowhere near that size. It's significantly smaller than Africa, so your maps are all screwed up. Mercator, the same guy that put that map together that we've all had in our school classroom, also included this on his map. You ever see that on your map? This is his depiction of the North Polar region, with 4 very large islands that had what he called indrawing seas, the 4 large rivers, which led to a 480-mile-across whirlpool that surrounds a massive 33-mile-in circumference magnetic mountain known to the ancients as Mount Meru, or the Rupus Negra. Many cultures actually shared this belief. Mercator, of all people, documents it quite thoroughly in his letters and maps. Very interesting. Now, have any of you guys ever play this game, Whisper Down the Lane? What happens when you have a long line and you start off, tell somebody and they tell somebody, what happens to the story by the time you get to the end? It changes. It doesn't look anything like it started out to be. When you start spending time looking in the ancient record, you find consistently that people from all cultures all around the world had a belief that we are on a circular, still flat, or set on pillars under a dome within which are the sun, moon, and stars. Get to the end of the line, oh, I heard we live on a spinning heliocentric ball in an ever-expanding universe. Something got lost in translation or shifted over time. Now, who would you say is smarter? The person closest to the source of information or the one furthest away from it? Closest. Well, when you start looking in the ancient record and you start thinking about the people who are closer to creation account, right, we start seeing stuff like this. We could do an entire conference just on the megalithic structures out there. They were doing amazing, phenomenal things, and we have no clue how they did it today with all our technology. You know, we come from an evolutionary mindset where things started out in chaos, started out as an exploding dot floating in nothing, and we evolved, and supposedly now we're at the top. We're the pinnacle. We are the smartest, right? That's what we're taught. But we're so smart we think we came from monkeys and we don't even know what freaking gender we are anymore. How smart are we? Think about that. For over 6,000 years of recorded human history, nobody, any race, color, creed, religion, nobody in the world ever had a problem identifying boy or girl. Out pops a baby. Something hanging there? Hey, guess what? Congratulations. It's a boy. You know? If you want to get scientific about it, hey, you got an X and a Y chromosome? Boy. 2 X chromosomes? Girl. You know, the fact that I even have to explain this in the 21st century is proof positive of entropy. That we started out perfect in the image and likeness of God, extremely intelligent, and have devolved to the point where we think from monkeys that evolved from goo to you by way of the zoo from an exploding dot, and now we don't know what gender we are anymore. Man. And so it should come as no surprise then that the Hebrews shared this same cosmological worldview. And I'll take it a step further. If you believe as I do that the Bible is divinely inspired by the Holy Spirit, then apparently the Holy Spirit believed that too.
Amen. Hallelujah.
People are like, oh, that's a psyop. If it's a psyop, it started with Moses, not the CIA. Genesis chapter 1. I even go even further back, go back to Job. Many people believe Job predates Genesis. Job had the same idea. Read Job 38. Okay, modern cosmology. Now, one of the things I hear all the time, is, Rob, you're making Christians look stupid. Okay, I'm going to address that tomorrow in quite a bit of detail, this whole idea that I'm making Christians look stupid. Let's look at what the other side believes.
What would you say to some of the parents who are like, look, you know, we're going to go ahead, we'll learn about evolution, but we also believe in creationism. What is the harm in learning the Bible's creation story?
Well, learning the story is fine. I mean, that's great, but it's not science. And tax dollars used for science education shouldn't be used to teach creationism as an alternative. Creationism is not right.
The notion of creationism, or in fact, look, Senator Marco Rubio, who's presumably a reasonably intelligent man, was asked, what's the age of the earth? And ultimately, either because he actually believed it or he was trying to appeal to some constituency, had to argue that it's a big mystery, that somehow we should teach kids both ideas that the earth is 6,000 years old and that it's 4.55 billion years old, which is what it is. If you think about that, somehow saying that, well, anything goes, we shouldn't offend religious beliefs by requiring kids to to understand reality. That's child abuse.
It sounds very laudable to teach the controversy, to teach both theories, but there aren't two theories. There's only one theory around. There's only one game in town as far as serious science is concerned. Of course, you get negative reactions from creationists, but who cares about creationists? They don't know anything.
How many of you have heard that, according to the theory of evolution, we share about 98% of our genetic makeup with chimpanzees? Have you heard that in school? Have you ever heard how they came to that number? 98%? We've all just heard it, right? We share 98% of our genome with chimps. Okay, The video I'm about to show you is not from a Kent Hovind or a creationist. It's from somebody who believes in evolution, somebody who believes we came from chimpanzees, but actually acknowledging how we got the 98%. Check this out.
When researchers sat down to compare the chimp and human genomes, those single-letter differences were easy to tally, but the big mismatch sections weren't. For example, if a genetic paragraph, thousands of letters long, appears twice in a human scroll, but only once in its chimp counterpart, should that second human copy count as thousands of changes, or just one? And what about identical paragraphs that appear in both genomes, but in different places, or in reverse order, or broken up into pieces? Rather than monkey around with these difficult questions, the researchers simply excluded all the large mismatch sections, a whopping 1.3 billion letters in all, and performed a letter-by-letter comparison on the remaining 2.4 billion, which turned out to be 98.77% identical. So, yes, we share 99% of our DNA with chimps if we ignore 18% of their genome and 25% of ours.
But that's what passes for science. Does that sound completely absurd to you? Oh yeah, if we just, 4 billion letters, let's throw those out. Hey, we're 98% the same. What? That's insane. But that's in college level science books being passed off as fact. This is not science. All right, this is the natural result of the depravity that comes from ignoring the Word of God, and it's the byproduct of hating God.
You have written that God is a psychotic delinquent invented by mad, deluded people.
No, I didn't say quite that. I said something rather better than that.
Oh, well, please tell us what you said. Please tell us what you said.
Well, I would have to read it from the book.
No, please.
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully.
So that's what you think of God?
Yeah.
He's like primary atheist of the world. And so if you're going to talk about science and religion, you need people like that to find out where are they thinking, where are they taking us, what's it all about. But we couldn't just feature Richard Dawkins. We need some other views here. And so we combed the landscape. And we found a Jesuit priest. This is the academic order of the Catholic Church. And we have with us Father Martin. Welcome to Star Talk.
Thank you very much.
All right. You, as a modern Catholic, have no problem with evolution.
Correct.
Correct. I can't say the same about other theologians who walk this earth. So what does that mean?
It means that
in the world, in politics, in all of this.
Sure. Well, it means that different Christians have different viewpoints on that. I'm a firm believer in evolution. There are some people who don't believe it. I'm not sure how you can't be convinced if you see the kind of archaeology and the sort of the kind of history of the world. But there they are. So I can't account for ignorance.
Okay, so not to put words in your mouth,
Sure.
but what you might be saying here in this conversation is that for religion to go forward and not be in conflict with science, it needs to embrace what science finds about the natural world and not jump in the face of the scientists and say, that conflicts with my interpretation of Scripture, therefore you must be wrong.
No, I agree. And I think most religious scientists, I'm not a religious scientist, would say that and would say, this
Yes,
is
they
helping,
would, by the way.
Yeah,
Yes.
This is helping me
The ones I know.
understand. Yeah, this is helping me understand God's beautiful world. And I think what happens sometimes is, religion gets caricatured. So obviously, if you're religious, you must not believe in evolution, which I think is
Most
false.
Well, it's certainly true for some. You're saying it's not true for all.
I'd say for a few.
When we come back, we're going to find out if you have to give up your religion to believe in evolution. Clearly, the good father here doesn't. But how about others? When Star Talk continues. So one of the great questions out there is how do we get more religions or more people who are religious on board with the moving frontier of science? Recognizing that you don't have to give up your religion unless perhaps your religion requires that there was no evolution. If it requires it, maybe you got to sort of lose it. But
that's probably pretty few religions, right?
I would
That's
think so.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, right? I mean,
Well, I hope so. I don't understand people who can't believe in evolution. I don't understand people who don't look at, the sort of carbon dating and things like that in fossils. I can't understand it. And I have a hard time understanding why people cannot accept the fact that God can work through evolution, that it's just as much of a miracle of creation if it takes 10 million years or 15 million years as if it took 7 days. So I don't understand that. We shouldn't say religious people think this or religious people think that, because it is a label that is applied to people and often applied to make them seem uneducated, insane, or just idiots. And as if you have to check your brain at the door.
Consider again that pale blue dot we've been talking about. Imagine that you take a good long look at it. Imagine you're staring at the dot for any length of time. And then try to convince yourself that God created the whole universe for one of the 10 million or so species of life that inhabit that speck of dust. Man, in his arrogance, thinks himself a great work, worthy of the interposition of a deity. Darwin wrote telegraphically in his notebook. More humble, and I think truer, to consider him created from animals. Close quote. We're Johnny-come-latelys. We live in the cosmic boondocks. We emerged from microbes and muck. Apes are our cousins.
You don't believe that the Earth is round only if you're an astronaut. You don't believe Napoleon existed only if you're a historian. You believe these things because they're facts proved by evidence. Evolution is also a demonstrated fact. The truth really is out there. It's not a matter of opinion.
So you believe it's liberating to tell people that there is no God?
I think a lot of people, when they give up God, feel a great sense of release and freedom.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, and how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else.
I'm a synthetic organic chemist. Origin of life is purely synthetic organic chemistry. There's no way around it. I'm perfectly situated to be commenting on this, to be critiquing the origin of life research. It is abiological. It is before biology takes over. This is purely synthetic organic chemistry. And making these compounds is very simple. 4 classes of compounds. You have to make them from what's available on a presumed prebiotic Earth. And so the chemistry is not hard for a synthetic organic chemist to follow, and any trained synthetic organic chemist can follow me on this. And I've never seen a synthetic organic chemist disagree with me on this. In fact, the people that might disagree with me are biologists because they've never made anything. The only thing they may have made is they buy a kit and they make it, which is made by chemists, but they've never made anything ab initio. And so it's the synthetic chemist that can critique origin of life research better than anyone else. So go ahead, ask your synthetic chemist friends to listen to what I have to say. If they have anywhere a master's degree or beyond in synthetic organic chemistry, have them critique what I say. We do not know how to build even a simple bacterium. The simplest bacterium with its 256 protein coding genes, we have no idea how to build it. First of all, we don't know how to build the molecules, the 4 classes of molecules that are needed for it. We don't know how to, even if we had those 4 classes of molecules, assemble them even into the simplest of bacteriums. We don't know how to do that. One can do that with the technologies we have today. We can make technologies, but we can't even make the simplest bacterium. Anybody who would say something contrary does not know what they are talking about. Show me the demonstration. Nobody has ever done it. And it's not because of lack of effort. It's not because of lack of will. First of all, they haven't been able to get the molecules to do this. And if they could make the molecules, even if we were to give them the molecules, they wouldn't have the information. There would be no inherent information in the DNA. But even if we gave them the DNA in the structure that they wanted, they wouldn't know how to put all the components together because of the sophistication within a cell. The interactomes, meaning that the interacting connectivity between the molecules, the van der Waals interactions, all of these have to be in the right place and in the right order for a cell to function. We don't even know how to define life, let alone knowing how to spark it to begin. When one looks at a typical textbook, one will see some prehistoric pond and molecules, and those molecules coming together and forming a cell, and those cells coming together and some slithering creature coming out of this pond. That is fallacious. There is no truth in that. We don't even know how to make the molecules. We are lost on how to do this. We can't even make the basic building blocks. But even if we could, from prebiotic type environment to make these, with all the intellect that we put into this, even if we could make them, we have no idea how to assemble them. You say, well, we can make the liposome, the cell membrane. We cannot. There's over 40,000 lipids have been identified in cell membranes. You want to take some simple ones? It's not just individual lipid membranes. You have to have the inside and the outside of the membrane have to be different. You have to have this huge array of proteins, that transmembrane proteins, and you have to have carbohydrates on the surface as identifiers. Even in the simplest bacterium, we have no idea how to put the structure together. It's not there. So not only do we not know how to make the basic components, we do not know how to build the structure even if we were given the basic components. So the Gedanken experiment is this: even if I gave you all the components, even if I gave you all the amino acids, all the protein structures from those amino acids that you wanted, all the lipids in the purity that you wanted, the DNA, the RNA, even in the sequence that you wanted, so I'm even giving you the code. And so now I say, and all the nucleic acids, can you now assemble a cell here in your individual bodies, not in your individual laboratories, not in a prebiotic cesspool, but in your nice laboratory? And the answer is a resounding no. And if anybody claims otherwise, they do not know this area. This is how far the misunderstanding has gone. Even science professors, even biology professors, think that there is a near building of life, that we understand all the ways to build life. We do not. Not only have none of the molecules been made ab initio under prebiotic-like conditions to make the homochiral molecules that are made. Remember, we need 4 classes of molecules. We need the nucleic acids, and then the homochiral systems that for the amino acids, which then need to be built up into protein structures. We need the carbohydrates, which have to be built up into the polycarbohydrate structures. And then we need the lipids, which also are chiral. All of these we need in homochiral form. We don't know how to do this in any prebiotic type scenario at all. These have not been made. And then to assemble these into a cell, it's never been done. So there's a gross misunderstanding. And this misunderstanding has come because of the projections of those who work in the area of origin of life. They do one little thing and then they extrapolate it, and then they work with the press to ramp it up even more, and they project as if they really know it. And so the layperson reads this and says, you see, scientists understand. And then it's not just the layperson. Scientists think that other scientists understand all of this, but they do not. So this is a cell. What is the origin of life? How do you get a cell like this? What is the origin of something like this? This is an amazing machine. A cell is an amazing machine. It's not just a blob of protoplasm. Every day it gets harder to have the origin of life, to come up with a scenario, because the origin of life becomes more and more complex every day. A cell is a factory. It has the lipid bilayer, which is extremely selective to let certain things in and not other things. It has all of this substructure in here, these little areas where energy is made in here. It has these microtubules which can form so you can move matter from point A to point B. If you go to a factory, what you see is these overhead hanging machines that are moving materials from point A to point B. In these systems, and the way they do this is they build these racks, but same thing happens in a cell. You get these microtubules to move material from point A to point B, and then as soon as the material is done moving, the microtubule breaks down and then assembles some other place. You say, well, why doesn't it leave it there? Because then the cell would become too rigid. So it just rebuilds it. It's just amazing factory what's happening in a cell. This is what we have to make. If we want to have origin of life, you got to start here. You don't start here. You start with a single cell. Just build a single cell. That's what we have to do in origin of life. Nobody has ever done this. If you've been taught that simple forms of life have been made, that is a lie that you are believing. Somebody told you a lie. That has never been done. Next slide. Organisms care about life. Molecules don't care. Chemistry, on the contrary, is utterly indifferent to life. Without a biologically derived entity acting upon them, molecules have never been shown to evolve toward life. Never. Molecules don't care about life. They don't know anything about moving toward life. They have no brain. Organisms want to move toward life and keep life going. Molecules don't care about life. Nobody has ever seen molecules assemble toward life. Never. It doesn't happen without a biological entity working on them. I asked all my colleagues, can you show me an example of this? Of molecules moving toward order, moving toward an ordered system where you have a non-regular assembly. Regular assembly is like A, or A, That you can get pure thermodynamic assembly. But non-ordered assembly is a non-regular pattern. That's what you have in DNA. We know from computer science you have to have non-regular patterns in order to have complexity for living systems. And I asked my colleagues, do you have any example of molecules without a biological entity acting upon them, moving to give an ordered assembly that is a non-regular pattern? And they sent me papers where chemists have taken molecules and assembled them in that way. I said, non-biological entity. You can't have a human doing this. Molecules don't move toward life. Well, even if you want to have molecules move toward life and you have human beings working upon them, can the human beings do it? And the answer is no. Next slide. So almost every chemical synthesis experiment in origin of life research can be summed up by a protocol analogous to this. They purchase chemicals, generally in high purity, from a chemical company. All right, so that's what they do. They first purchase the chemicals. They mix those chemicals together in water in high concentrations in a specific order under some set of carefully devised conditions in a modern lab. Then they can obtain a mixture of compounds that have a resemblance to one or more of the basic 4 classes of chemicals needed for life. So what you need for life is you need carbohydrates, nucleic acids, amino acids, and lipids. That's what we know. All life we know composes those 4 building blocks. So they try to make those 4 building blocks. Then they publish a paper making bold assertions about origin of life from these functionless crude mixtures of stereochemically scrambled intermediates, much like Miller did in 1952. Nothing has changed in 66 years. Nothing. Nothing's changed. Exactly where we were in 1952 is exactly where we have remained. Think about what's been done in science in the past 60 years. Think about how we have now satellite connectivity. Remember, in 1952, there had never been a satellite. Now we have satellite connectivity. We have cell phones. We have structure of DNA. We can manipulate DNA structure. Nothing has changed in origin of life studies in 66 years. That's important to realize. Then you engage with the ever gullible press to dial up the knob of unjustified extrapolations. Watch the mesmerized layperson exclaim, "You see, scientists understand how life formed." Then you encourage a generation of science textbook writers to make colorful, deceptive cartoons of raw chemicals assembling from cells which then emerge as slithering creatures from a prehistoric pond. That is exactly what is done every one of their experiments.
Evolution is a fact. It's documented by science.
Right, how did that happen?
I told you we don't know. Believe these things because they're facts, proved by evidence. Evolution is also a demonstrated fact.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
Many people are extremely illogical.
Of course, and this is where Ancient Aliens enters the picture. Coming from an academic like Richard Dawkins. He's like the main spokesperson for evolution these days. Which means if that's the main view of evolution, that's what's making it into the textbooks. And of course, that's what we are being indoctrinated with on a regular basis on primetime television. You know, Ancient Aliens is just one of many shows out there putting forth that idea. So, you know, as I'm going through all this stuff and the question is popping in my head, look, are we going to trust science or the Bible?
46% of Americans believe the story of Genesis is true. So I just want...
It's amazing. It's astonishing.
I know, that the world was created in 6 days.
So are you urging people to give up on the idea of creationism?
Oh, yeah. Please.
The amazing thing is that every atom in your body came from a star that exploded. And the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It really is the most poetic thing I know about physics. You are all stardust. You couldn't be here if stars hadn't exploded, because the elements, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, all the things that matter for evolution weren't created at the beginning of time. They're created in the nuclear furnaces of stars, and the only way they can get into your body is if the stars were kind enough to explode. So forget Jesus. The stars died so that you could be here today, okay? And anyway.
By the end of the 1920s, astronomer Edwin Hubble, working with the large 100-inch telescope atop Mount Wilson outside Los Angeles, had established that our galaxy was only one of many galaxies in the universe.
When we look out at other galaxies, on average, they're moving away from us. And those that are twice as far away are moving twice as fast, and those that are 3 times as far away are moving 3 times as fast. And of course, that makes us look like we're the center of the universe.
Such a condition would imply that we occupy a unique position in the universe, analogous, in a sense, to the ancient conception of a central Earth. This hypothesis cannot be disproved, but it is unwelcome and would only be accepted as a last resort in order to save the phenomena. Therefore, we disregard this possibility. The unwelcome position of a favored location must be avoided at all costs. Such a favored position is intolerable.
Several decades ago, we found a problem so great that it was brushed under the carpet for many a decade. And this is the fact that galaxies spin too fast. In fact, 10 times too fast. By rights, the galaxy should fly apart. Therefore, scientists said that we have to have dark matter, a halo of matter that surrounds the galaxy and holds the galaxy together.
And what have they discovered?
absolutely nothing. Zilch.
What is a little bit perturbing is that after 50 years, we still haven't found what the dark matter is. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean they're not there. It just means they're harder to find than we thought.
We look out in the universe, and 85% of all the gravity that's out there has some mysterious unknown source. We add up all the stars, the galaxies, the planets, the comets, the black holes, the dark clouds, everything out there that we can see, touch, smell, or taste. And it doesn't add up to give us the gravity that we see operating in this universe. So really, we should be calling it the dark force, because we don't know if it's made of matter. It could be a profound misnomer, sending people off in thought directions that might not really be the right path. So dark matter is just simply what we call this thing about which we know nothing, responsible for 85% of the gravity of the cosmos. It is the longest standing unsolved problem in modern astrophysics. Dark matter, dark energy. Everything we know about the universe, what we're made of, galaxies, stars, planets, that's all right here. So, according to this chart, we are 96% stupid.
So the problem with cosmology is that we keep inventing theories, ad hoc theories, to try to explain the data, such as inflation, dark matter, dark energy, and so on, just to keep patching the theory up.
There is a crisis in cosmology. Usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. However, in cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science.
A very large number of universes, perhaps even an infinite number, could in principle exist in a vast hyperspace.
We can understand the idea of hyperspace by comparing it to a mug of beer.
The beer mug would be the hyperspace, and the bubbles would be these individual universes. The bubbles in a beer mug are all physically about the same. But suppose they span a range of properties. Some of them might have carbon and oxygen and stars and gravity, and others don't. We would be in one of the ones that leads to a rich, complex universe culminating with life as we know it.
If there are an infinite number of other universes, the fine-tuning that seems to be present in ours isn't an example of God's plan, but rather the law of statistics. Most of these universes wouldn't naturally develop in ways that fostered intelligent life, but a few would.
So then the explanation for the specialness of the universe is that we are winners in a gigantic cosmic lottery. It stands to reason that we couldn't be living and discussing this in a universe that was hostile to life. Only the bio-friendly ones get populated with thinking beings.
Having a multitude of universes is actually quite a simple and natural consequence of some of the most favored models for the birth and early evolution of our universe. It's kind of like stars and planets. As long as you have the capacity to make one, it's easy to make lots of them.
Oh, really? Wow! Beer mug hyperspace multi-bubble verse. Really?
Beer.
Seriously? They're farting out beer bubble universes. Okay? That's what they're doing. Hey, I got an idea. Yep. Multi-beer bubble universe. And they call that science. And they make fun of us? Really? Yeah, I'm not going to take that from them anymore. I'm not going to sit here and let people who think they came from monkeys out of a beer bubble universe ridicule me for looking into what I'm looking into and considering, a possibility. If you guys can think about beer bubble universes, then I can think about a snow globe. Fair enough? Okay, let's move on.
That's what they believe, and much of that we have embraced, even in creation ministries. You know what? You don't have the intellectual high ground in this discussion if you believe that. I've had many people try to interview me, and I stopped doing interviews for the press because I know they're just going to take me out of context, look for that little snippet that they could try to make me look stupid with, put it with goofy music, put other people in there, and try to make fun of us. So whenever the news media has come up to me for an interview, I said, here's the deal. You don't have the right to use my image or anything I say unless we have the following conditions. If you're going to interview me, I get to record the entire conversation, the whole interview I'm going to record, and I get to interview you first. Because I'm going to interview them and find out what they believe. As soon as I realize that most of these people believe this stuff, they don't have the intellectual high ground in this discussion. They're going to have no room to try to make fun of me. You believe you came from an exploding dot and evolved out of a rock. And your smartest guys are telling you that we are off by 10 to the 120th power when it comes to our understanding of the cosmos. We are 96% stupid. And you're going to claim to be the intellectual high ground here? I don't think so. More and more scientists, mainstream scientists, where's my clicker, are even beginning to acknowledge this also, not just creationists and flat earthers and stuff. You have Nikola Tesla, right? Back in his day, he said, today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. He was already seeing where it was going in his day. About maybe 50 to 100 years or so before that, you had this guy here, Samuel Rowbotham, advocating for a more zetetic form of science, zetetic meaning investigation, proceeding with investigation and inquiry, doing tests. He said the whole system of Newtonian astronomy taken together constitutes a most monstrous absurdity. It is false in its foundation, irregular, unfair, and illogical in its details and in its conclusion, inconsistent and contradictory. Because the Newtonian theory is held to be true, they are led to reject the scriptures altogether, to ignore the worship and doubt and deny the existence of a creator and supreme ruler of the world. He went on to say that the scriptures were not intended to teach science truthfully is, in substance, to declare that God himself has stated and commissioned his prophets to teach things which are utterly false. That's some powerful statements right there. Mainstream, this is April of this year, April 30th. Article came out, Mainstream Scientists, saying cosmology has some big problems. The field relies on a conceptual framework that has trouble accounting for new observations. Let me see if I can move forward in my notes here. He says, modern science is in serious need of a reboot. Compounding this problem, most observations of the universe occur experimentally and indirectly. Today's space telescopes provide no direct view of anything. They produce measurements through an interplay of theoretical predictions and pliable parameters in which the model is involved every step of the way. The framework literally frames the problem. It determines where and how to observe. And so, despite the advanced technologies and methods involved, the profound limitations to the endeavor also increase the risk of being led astray by the kind of assumptions that cannot be calculated. That's the individual there that said that. He went on to say, a key piece of the Big Bang paradigm was criticized by one of the theory's original proponents for having become indefensible as a scientific theory. Why? Because inflation theory relies on ad hoc contrivances to accommodate almost any data, and because its proposed physical field is not based on anything with empirical justification. This is probably because a crucial function of inflation is to bridge the transition from an unknowable Big Bang to a physics we can recognize today. So, is it science or a convenient invention? He concludes his article by admitting, quote, in order to maintain a mathematically unified theory valid for the entire universe, we must accept that 95% of our cosmos is furnished by completely unknown elements and forces for which we have no empirical evidence whatsoever. Mainstream scientist taking an honest look at his profession. I'm going to just distill that down into this right here. I say, what is taught today as fact is really nothing more than unproven ad hoc theories based on presupposition derived from outlandish conjecture, which itself was contrived from sheer fantasy, all of which ends up beautifully illustrated by the hands of artists and published in textbooks as self-evident truth. That's exactly what science has turned into today, especially as it pertains to our cosmos and origins. So, when it comes to belief, here are our choices, ladies and gentlemen. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he made us in his own image. In the beginning, Nothing farted out the heavens and the earth, and we got here from goo to you by way of the zoo. Or, in the beginning, nothing farted out the heavens and the earth, and ETs seeded the goo to make you. Those are our choices. I don't know about you, but I'm going to go with option number 1. And I'm not going to try to bend option 1 to match that other stuff. They are completely and totally incompatible. So, one of the things I often hear about this is, well, Rob, if that's true, if what you're saying is true, it's too big a conspiracy. Have you heard that before? Have you said that before? It's too big a conspiracy. No way. There's no way that could continue, right? Well, okay, let's think about that. Is it really too big a conspiracy? Compartmentalization. Do you think a private knows what the sergeant knows in the military? You think the sergeant knows what the first lieutenant knows? The first lieutenant knows what the captain knows? Captain knows what the general knows? No, they know only what they need to know to do whatever they've been assigned to do. That's compartmentalization, right? Look into the Manhattan Project. If you want to really understand compartmentalization at work and hundreds of thousands of people being involved and tens of billions of dollars being involved, the vice president himself didn't even know what was going on. The person in the office next to you didn't know what you were doing, and you didn't know what he was doing. No problem. Compartmentalization. The mechanic doesn't know what the king knows. Start looking into some of this stuff right here. Learn about the Illuminati, Freemasons, the Vatican, Jesuits, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg meetings, Bohemian Grove, Committee of 300, Council of 13, and just the tip of a very big iceberg, right, of control. Again, that's how compartmentalization works. Not a problem. What government is trustworthy? You guys think the United States government is trustworthy? What about the Russians? The Russians must be trustworthy. Oh, I know, the Chinese are trustworthy. Or maybe the Koreans. Oh, Israel's trustworthy. Yeah. Governments are full of conspiracies. The military answers to its government. When it comes to the space program, a little over 500 human beings have allegedly been to space. And of the 500 plus individuals who have allegedly been to space, a vast majority of those come from military backgrounds. How many of you know militaries are trained to keep secrets? Right down to the private. Has to be able to keep its nation's secret, right, from the enemy. Right? So you already have people who have been trained, military trained, to keep secrets for a government that's anything but trustworthy. Then you also have, combined with that, many of the guys that are involved, not only are they in the military, but they're also in secret societies. Secret societies. You think they might have something to do with keeping secrets? Maybe. Just maybe. Space programs also answer to their government. All nations who signed the Antarctic Treaty are, in my opinion, suspect. Secret societies keep secrets, right? How many of the astronauts were Freemasons? Well, when I started looking into Freemasonry and what they might potentially believe and have to say concerning this issue, found something really interesting. Albert Pike is one of the recognized authorities in the Freemasonry world, was a prolific writer about Freemasonry. Chapter 1, talking about the apprentice in Freemasonry. You can look this up, freemasons-freemasonry.com. It's their own website, right? They're telling you this stuff. Right at the beginning of it says, the dimensions of the lodge, our brethren of the York Rite say, are unlimited, and it's covering no less than the canopy of heaven. To this object, the canopy of heaven, Scripture calls the firmament, they say the Mason's mind is continually directed, and thither the hopes at last to arrive by the aid of the theological ladder which Jacob in his vision saw ascending from earth to heaven, the three principal rounds of which are denominated faith, hope, and charity, and which admonish us to have faith in God, hope in immortality, and charity to all mankind. Accordingly, a ladder, sometimes with 9 rounds, is seen on the chart, resting at the bottom on the earth, its top in the clouds, the stars shining above it, and this is deemed to represent that mystic ladder which Jacob saw in his dream set up on the earth, and the top of it reaching to heaven, with the angels of God ascending and descending on it. The addition of the 3 principal rounds to the symbolism is wholly modern and incongruous. When they get down to the square and compass, the square is a right angle formed by 2 right lines. It is adapted only to a plane surface and belongs only to geometry, earth measurement, that trigonometry which deals with planes and with the earth, which the ancients supposed to be a plane. You guys get that? The compass describes circles and deals with spherical trigonometry, the science of the spheres and heavens. The former, therefore, is an emblem of what concerns the earth and the body, the latter of that what concerns the heavens and the soul. So they're telling you in their own iconography, in the structure of their Freemasonic lodges, that that's structured after the firmament, and the square and compass represents the plane earth. Coincidentally, many of our astronauts, were Freemasons. Maybe they were hiding something. Why was NASA completely run by high-degree Freemasons during the Apollo missions? Why were and are so many of the astronauts and others within NASA Freemasons? Could it be that they knew something and were/are therefore responsible for protecting the secret? Consider what Albert Pike had to say, what I just showed you right there in Morals and Dogma. In their own writings, they describe the ceiling as the canopy of heaven. To this object, the firmament, they say the Mason's mind is continually directed. They later say the square is a right angle formed by two right lines representing the plane earth. Right there. Okay, let's continue. Most are just doing their job and have no reason to question it. Oh, I've got a friend that works at NASA. Oh, congratulations, he builds stuff. Cool. Oh, I got another friend. He looks at a monitor and reads data. Awesome. They build stuff to put on something that goes on a launch pad with very few people are going to be involved with, that's going to launch and go who knows where. And by the way, they all lose contact with whatever they shoot up as soon as it goes over the Indian Ocean.
Orion's over 100 miles up and going about 17,000 miles per hour. Just as it passes over the Indian Ocean, we lose communication. This is expected. The communications link we have through satellites to Orion is momentarily lost.
Why are you telling me that you lose contact, even today, with the stuff that you send up when it goes over the Indian Ocean? Could it be in that blackout time that somebody's switching something somewhere and feeding data to the people that are looking at the monitors? Maybe, I'm just suggesting, maybe that could be something like that. They build stuff, whoop-de-doo. They read data on computers, oh wow. They lose track over the Indian Ocean. The conspiracy of cosmology is no bigger than that of evolution. Is every teacher and everybody in on the conspiracy of evolution? No, they're just parroting what they've been taught themselves. As are so many other people with cosmology. It's the same thing, no different. And they put it in a textbook and nobody questions it. All right, then what's the motivation? Why would they lie? Well, I think this billboard says a lot. In science we trust. Freedom from religion. They got their prophets, right? Scientism is a religion. This is my theory. First, get people to doubt Yahuwah's word by destroying the very foundation of our Bible, Genesis, specifically the creation account. Number two, set up a new paradigm where God is out and science is in. Evolution removes Yahuwah from the equation. Number three, when evolution finally runs its course and becomes utterly bankrupt, introduce the idea of intelligent design, but deny the true designer his due credit and place it rather on ancient aliens. Number four, promote the ancient aliens theme as much as possible in all forms of media by perpetuating the concept of Earth as a tiny blue marble orbiting an average sun in an average galaxy among trillions of other galaxies in an ever-expanding universe. With so much potential for life to exist in such a vast expanse, the idea of alien scientists being our creators seems a lot more plausible over time and heavy indoctrination. And number five, the stage is set for our alien creators to return and bestow upon us their miracles, signs, and wonders in order to convince us all the more that all religions are false. When we put our trust in them, finally, when Christ does return, we are all convinced that he is the enemy and our united world gathers together to make war with him. I went to a conference, it was called the Contact in the Desert Conference out in California, and it was the who's who of the ancient aliens crowd. Everybody you've seen, the big hair guy, Giorgio, Eric Von Daniken, they were all there. It was a whole weekend of these guys talking about, the Anunnaki and who seeded our world, and they're coming back, and we've got to ascend, and we've got to be ready for them and all this stuff. And oh, by the way, they have an enemy we may have to help them to defend against. And there's a sense of urgency. They're saying this. They're saying that there's a real sense of urgency. The beings that they're in contact with in these alien abduction scenarios are saying, hey, people got to get ready. You got to embrace us. You got to be ready for us because we have an enemy and you're going to have to help fight against him. What does Revelation say? The armies of the world are gathered together in the valley of Megiddo to make war with him who's coming on the horse. If 2% of what I heard at that conference is true, the church is woefully ill-prepared to deal with what's coming. How many of you know Scripture talks about a great falling away, an apostasy? I'll tell you, because most of these churches out there aren't talking about any of this stuff. When a mile-wide spaceship parks over the city, they're going to have no answers for it. And we've had the Catholic Church all along saying, yeah, you know what, evolution, I think that might be true. Oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, plurality of worlds, the church fathers, so-called church fathers, were talking about ideas of plurality of worlds. There could be other aliens out there. Well, if you open the door to the possibility of other life forms out there, did they fall too? Did they have an Adam and Eve that sinned and need a Savior? Did Christ have to die for them too? Or is it possible that they didn't fall? They didn't sin. Ooh, then we might have to learn something from them. I mean, you've got the Vatican saying, if ET shows up, we'll baptize them, ... if they need it. We could have something to learn from them. I'm telling you, something's coming, and what intrigues me about this topic that we're talking about this evening is it nullifies and obliterates all of it. If we're in an enclosed world cosmology, you can forget evolution and ancient aliens goes out the window. There's no likelihood. It's not even remotely plausible. This brings me to my final point. How did we get here? The powerful influence of media. How many of you ever heard of the Seven Mountain Prophecy? Anybody ever hear of that before? Interesting concept. As I understand it, Bill Bright, Francis Schaeffer, Lauren Cunningham, three pretty big individuals in evangelical circles, all got together one day and had individually been shown visions from God on how to be more effective at reaching the world with the gospel. And as they started to share with each other what they had each individually been learning, they realized this is actually, we had different separate components to a bigger vision, which eventually morphed into what became known as the Seven Mountain Prophecy. And the whole idea behind it is that each of what they call mountains, or you could call them spheres of influence, have a tremendous impact on our culture. And they are identified as religion, family, education, media, arts and entertainment, government, and business. Clearly, when we look at that list, it's easy to see how these things have had an impact on our culture. When I've looked at this, I realized, well, actually, the mountains of media, arts, and entertainment have had an influence even on the other mountains. And the enemy knows this. It has been leveraging it and using it to his advantage for decades. How many of you know we just have an illusion of choice when it comes to media? A very few Luciferian run, I would say, corporations control all the media that we consume. So don't you think that they have an agenda that they're trying to put forward? How many movies and TV shows are always putting forward this idea of a multiverse? You guys hear that? Multiverse, panspermia, ancient aliens. It's in everything. And it's been that way for decades. How many of you know Alex Kendrick, the movies Facing the Giants, Fireproof, Courageous, some of these movies, Christian movies that came out? He got started doing the Christian movies and stuff that he's doing because he said, I found a Barna Group survey that basically said the top 3 most influential factors in our culture were movies, television, and the internet. The church wasn't even in the top 10. That's absolutely true. You look at the Nielsen reports, the average American, according to the Nielsen reports, is watching anywhere from 4 to 6 hours of television a day. Even more so when you add what they're looking at with, phones and mobile devices and things like that. Spending tens of billions of dollars a year going to the movies. How many of you know the scripture says, it doesn't say anything about the world coming to the church. It tells the church to go into the world. That's the Great Commission, right? Go ye therefore into all the world, you, the church, go. It's nothing that says, hey, world, go to the church. We've got it backwards. Where's the world? Well, at least in America, they're watching 6 hours of television a day and spending tens of billions of dollars in the movie theater. Maybe we need to set up shop there. George Lucas said, the church, the influence of the church, which used to be all-powerful, has been usurped by film. He's absolutely right. And that's why I'm working on this. Everything that I talk about here, everything that I've researched, everything that I've been talking about for a better part of a decade, I'm funneling into this project. Because I believe this is cool. We got a few hundred people here. That's awesome. We do a YouTube channel. We get a few thousand hits, maybe, get 100,000 subscribers. Awesome. It pales in in comparison to what the devil's been doing with media for decades. To my knowledge, there's nothing out there in the mainstream that's even remotely trying to combat the ancient alien narrative. So you can pray with me, because that's the whole reason behind Seed. I'm trying to plant seeds that will lead people into an understanding of the kingdom and walk into a relationship with Jesus Christ and help them to understand the times that we're living in. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video presentation. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, like the video, and share it on your favorite social media sites. There's a lot more to come, so stay tuned, and we'll see you back next time. All right, that concludes that presentation. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for the super chats. A lot of good interaction, looks like, in the chat room. Thank you guys all for joining us. A few people were asking me about my speaking schedule. I've actually been turning away invites to speak just because I've been so busy working on Seed, and I need to stay busy working on Seed. The few conferences that I have done are because people that I love and trust and have been with pretty much since the beginning, like Chris and Liz with the Take on the World, been there from the beginning. John Gabrielson when he was doing the Back to the Future conferences. Philip and Gina doing the Declaring the End from the Beginning conferences. Robbie Davidson, of course, with the Flat Earth International conferences. So, these are regulars that I've been at for a number of years and will likely continue to do. But there is one conference that I just recently committed to just because I figured, well, I have time to do it. It's called Flattoberfest. That's this right here. And it's October 20th, and it's being held at The Firmament is the name of the place. So I thought that was kind of cool, in Greenville, South Carolina. So that's the next one. You can probably go online and look for information about that. I'm not sure if there's a website or anything out there, or even exactly who's putting it on, but that's one of the next ones that I'm going to be at. The Flattoberfest, October 20th, Greenville, South Carolina, and then of course the Flat Earth International Conference. It'll be here in Dallas in November. So that's all the ones that I'll be attending and speaking at this year, and I'll be probably limiting the ones that I'll be doing next year. I used to have a calendar up. It's on my robschannel.com. If you go to robschannel.com, I think it's in the About Rob page. That I need to update it. I haven't done anything with it in a long time, but I probably should. So if you're looking for dates where I'm going to be or whatever, that would be the place to look, except again, I haven't updated it. So I just told you where the next ones are going to be. So hopefully I can see some of you guys there. And in the meantime, I will put up the other presentations. That the one you saw tonight is part 1 of 3 that I did at the Take on the World 2019 conference. So be on the lookout. Keep an eye on my YouTube channel or my Facebook page. I'll be editing the second one this week, and if I don't do it sometime during the week, I'll more than likely do it next Sunday. So we'll have another one of these live streams, and we'll do that. And then I'll have one more from the Take on the World conference. I'll get up part 3, and that will be that. All right. So thank you guys so much again for watching tonight. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate all the support. I don't say it enough. I apologize for that. But for everybody that has prayed for us and everybody that has contributed financially, both toward the work that I do. I mean, this is what I do for a living. All right. I'm a content producer on my way to producing Seed. So anybody that's supported just our generic work, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. We could not do it without you, especially since YouTube is hacking our income like way down. Like substantially. I mean, it was already hacked in half after the adpocalypse, and then it feels like it's been hacked in half again. I mean, it's a fraction of what YouTube used to bring in for us. So people who have supported us, you are keeping us alive, you're feeding us, keeping the lights on, and all that. So I really, really appreciate it. And everybody that has supported the Seed Project, thank you so much. Again, can't do it without you. So, a little bit, lot, whatever you've given, we appreciate it. Thank you. And I'll try to keep you guys up to date on that in the near future. I'm working with Justin Elms and Tony Martin on a video game. We're calling it Noah VR. So we're working feverishly right now to get some elements done, to put together a trailer to show you what we've, a little bit of, just a tiny bit of what we've done so far, but to give you an idea of what's in the works as far as the video game goes. My artist just sent me page 16 of 24 of the comic book, so we're cranking that out. Hope to have that wrapped up pretty soon. And in the meantime, you know, we're just raising funds as much as we can for the TV series. And interesting conversations I've been having lately with Morné Thuenson in South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa. He's trying to work with some special effects houses out there, some big people that have worked on stuff like, you know, Chappie, District 9, some pretty big movies out there, to put together probably about a 7 or 8 minute teaser. The teaser of episode 1 is like 2.5 pages, which would be, you know, under 3 minutes of actual screen time. But what we've done with the comic book, like the teaser starts off with the airplane crash. I mean, just this plane crashes, and that's where it starts. In the comic book, I backed up to the aerial dogfight that led to the crash. So I'm giving you quite a bit more information in the comic book than what you will see in the pilot episode. So what we're trying to do is see if, with the funds that we've raised already, if we can put together a 100% CGI but realistic looking version of that, using the comic book basically as a storyboard. So you know, keep us in your prayers in that regard. That's what's being worked on right now in the background. In the meantime, I've been able to do some substantial upgrades to my computer, which has desperately needed it. So that's where some of the funds have gone so far, and also buying some more CG assets and CGI creation tools like Character Creator 3, iClone 7, and a whole bunch of stuff related to that with motion capture and stuff like that. I mean, it's getting so good now that you can actually use your iPhone. They've got plugins for the iPhone that you can use your iPhone as your motion capture device, and it will like I don't even have to put any ping pong ball dots on my face or anything like that. It will just see what I'm doing, whatever my head's doing and my face is doing, and whatever I'm saying, and it will translate it to the characters. So this technology that's out now, on the one hand, it's really scary. On the other hand, it's pretty awesome for what we're trying to do at Seed. So yeah, that's what's going on in the background. That's why I haven't been around in a while. People, you know, where'd you go? How come you're not making videos? Well, I'm busy, crazy busy working on Seed. So in the meantime, I'll try to keep getting videos out as much as possible, keep putting out the content that I've talked about at the conferences, and keep you guys informed with what's going on with Seed. But once again, thank you for all your support. All right, guys, love you. We'll see you back next time.